Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another installment of our Core Diet webinars. Tonight we are going to be talking about weight loss plateaus and what we can do about it. I always like to mention when I do these Core Diet webinars that I always have, obviously, the endurance athlete in mind. And for this one in particular, it could be for a short course, long course, triathlete, marathon runner, any type of endurance sport. But I do like to mention that if maybe I was working with an elite or professional, we might do things just slightly a little bit different than what we're going to discuss here. Or maybe someone on the call is just a fitness enthusiast and you weren't necessarily training for a formal event. There are some more simpler approaches that we could take. And so I just wanted to mention that. But everything here tonight, if you're an athlete, you will certainly get something out of it. First, I'll just quickly review what we'll be talking about. I'll give the briefest introduction and definition of what we're actually talking about with the weight loss plateau. We will go through all the steps of assessment and to see what's going on, and I will provide some tips and remedies for each one of those. We'll do a little summary. We'll briefly discuss what happens if you've gone through all those steps of assessment and the scale or body calipers don't change. A few tools that I would like to mention, and of course some final thoughts. So with that, we will get started. Introduction. So whether you're an athlete or not, you most likely have experienced some sort of weight or body composition plateau at some point in your life. If you've ever tried to improve your body composition for athletic performance, maybe your A race, or for any other type of health reasons, you most certainly have probably gotten to a place where that scale has stalled. And let's just quickly define what we're talking about with the plateau here. A weight loss plateau is defined as reaching a state of little or no change after a time of activity or progress, despite making the same efforts as during prior weight loss periods. So you're doing everything that you can do from an exercise, physical activity standpoint, recovery, eating habits, and all of a sudden the weight loss has stopped happening. Now, what a weight loss plateau is not is if you are someone that weighs yourself every day and you just had 1 or 2 days without seeing the scale go down, and we'll get into that a little bit more. Steps of assessment. If you have suddenly found yourself that you are at one of these true weight loss body composition plateaus, the best thing is to assess the entire situation from all angles so you can make any changes rather than do something erratic or extreme because that's not going to give you the long-term success that we're looking for. And chances are, if you go through each one of these steps, that there should be one or more factors that were overlooked at one point that could be the key to breaking through this barrier. There are a few other things, as I mentioned, we'll touch at the end of this that don't fall in that category. So the following are going to be some of the common scenarios that I see in my practice where athletes find themselves in one of these plateaus, and then we'll discuss some of the tips to sort of get you back on track. First one, is this the first week with no loss? And I just started to allude to this. So if you've been making regular progress for a few weeks, for a few months, and you have just had a recent encounter, you just recently encountered a lull in action, you have not reached a true plateau yet. If the first week that we don't see the scale budge does not mean that we need to start doing anything differently. It is quite common to have some weeks where you have more weight loss than expected, and you have other weeks where there is none. And your body weight fluctuates from day to day. And if you're someone that jumps on the scale every day, you have probably seen these types of numbers go up and down. It also could be possible that you're putting on lean body mass during this process, in which that case your body weight will not be going down as you'll be putting on some masses at the same time. So if that is the case, if you've reached a plateau and you think it's just because it's your first week without the scale going down, this is what I really urge all of my athletes to do, is only weigh yourself once per week on the same day. In general, at the Core Diet and with our Q22 Systems athletes, it's usually, if you've seen your training log, it's usually on a Monday. I occasionally have a few athletes that do it on Tuesday, they prefer, but Monday or Tuesday is a really great day following your long weekend training sessions. Really try to avoid jumping on the scale every single day, because what I've seen is athletes start making changes to their eating habits daily according to what they see on the scale. And we really want to get into the habit of only doing it once per week. Also get a body fat test completed by a professional rather than relying on those body fat percentages that you see on the scales, which is what seems to be the norm these days of what most athletes have. That number can be useful in tracking long-term progress of your body fat composition, but for a baseline, we really do want to make sure that we have something concrete. And the other important aspect of that is to make sure that you have the same person measure you each time, and really you don't need to have it done more than every 6 to 8 weeks. I think every 2 or 3 months is a good amount of time in between. And having the same person measure it is just going to keep it more accurate. Next step, are you over-consuming and under-training? And so we can all be honest here. We've all been guilty of cutting a few workouts short, or maybe we've even had to skip a workout altogether. Life does get in the way. And we've all indulged in that extra snack from time to time. However, the combination of these two actions is what really derails our focus, and as a result, our weight loss goals do suffer. Now, I'm not talking about if you just cut a workout short once, or you just had an extra snack just once during the week. It's when those workouts are getting cut on a weekly basis, on a daily basis. Maybe you're cutting out all your recovery workouts, or maybe you're just, after every training session, you're using that as a cheat meal. And so that's really where this over-consuming and under-training can really be a double whammy. The good news is that this behavior in general can be an easy fix for most athletes if you're willing to put in the work. It's just a few tweaks here. And so the remedy tip for that, and this is what I make all my clients and athletes go through this process at least once when we're working together, and you've got it, that's food logging. This is really going to tell you if you are sort of over-consuming here and there. Now, many of you have done, I'm sure, have done some sort of tracking in the past before. When it is done correctly, this what I call old school method is still one of the best tools to manage weight, and it really is the key to many success stories. I can tell from the clients that I work with, those who actually go through this process at least one time has much more success than those that don't. And it's much easier these days. You don't have to actually sit down and write it in a notebook. You can use something on your smartphone, some sort of app. It makes it very, very simple. Food logging will give you a true picture of what's happening with your diet, and I usually say you need to commit to tracking for at least 7 to 14 days, and this is really for the athlete that has hit a sort of true weight loss plateau. If you're just food logging just to see where you're at in terms of what you're consuming, 7 days is adequate. Up to 2 weeks for if you're hitting a weight loss plateau. Now, remember that nutrition should be supporting your training. And just as workouts will vary from day to day and cycle to cycle, what we call training periodization, your nutrition should vary accordingly as well, and we call this nutrition periodization. We really want to make sure that we get in the habit of looking at the diet from a weekly perspective, and through this process of food logging, you will be able to get a handle on that. And what I mean from a weekly perspective is, for example, if we're just talking calories for a minute, if you're targeting 1,800 calories per day, you just want to make sure that your daily average over the course of the entire week is 1,800. You will have some days that you consume higher, as high as 2,500, and you might have some days that you're at 1,400. it's going to match your training, and that's what I was talking about with the nutrition periodization. So if the days that you have higher training volume, your calorie intake is going to be higher because we're supporting the training that we're doing through food. The next step of assessment that you would want to go through if you're hitting a plateau is, are you eating enough? Not eating enough to support your training will slow the amount of energy you expend, i.e., for example, calories burned. And this is because the body begins to adjust to this deficiency in calories. Now, the problem is that severe calorie restriction over the long term really can do your body more harm than good. It's going to negatively affect your metabolism, which will result in fat storage and muscle wasting. And yes, initially, this calorie reduction, extreme calorie reduction, will produce a weight loss. But you will eventually go into starvation mode and start storing the calories you do eat for the next time it is starved. I always tell everyone your body learns really, really fast. Additionally, the nutritional deficiency that you will be creating because your intake is so low is going to put your body at risk and can lead to injury, poor performance, and sickness due to a weakened immune system. So what do we do if we're not eating enough? So if you are guilty of starving your body, the goal should be to get your engine, i.e. your metabolism, up and running efficiently again. You want to take a step back and aim to recreate a deficit of only 10 to 15 below what is needed for weight maintenance. For example, again, we're just talking calories here for simplicity. If you require 2,000 calories per day, you'd want to cut it down to about 1,800. You'd want to make sure that you're eating every 2 to 3 hours by including small snacks, and do not skip meals. Now, you may have to eat smaller portions at each of these snacks and meals to keep up with the frequency and to stay within your calorie goals, but the important thing is to eat and be mindful of what you're putting in your mouth. Now, for some people, this is going to be a huge jump in terms of calories from where you currently stand. And I have had many experiences with this over the course of my professional career, where clients have come to me and they've been on extremely low-calorie diets. And for the first couple weeks of getting this metabolism and engine back up and running again, we actually see the number on the scale go slightly up before heading back down again. And this is nothing to be alarmed about. This is just a symptom of your metabolism adjusting after being used to starving. So it really just needs to go over that hump. I generally do not see the number on the scale go up dramatically. It's usually just a couple pounds, and then it really starts to go down. But for the long term, it's worth having those few weeks of gaining a couple extra pounds for the long-term success. Are you getting too much or too little of one macronutrient? So as a quick refresher, macronutrients are those essential nutrients, your proteins, carbohydrates, and fats that make up the total calories. So as a reminder, for carbohydrates and protein, we have about 4 calories per gram. In fat, we have about 9 calories per gram. While carbohydrates provide the energy necessary for life and training, it is very common for the endurance athlete to overconsume those less nutrient carbohydrates, such as pastas, breads, all your grains, and underconsume high-quality foods that are rich with micronutrients, such as phytochemicals, antioxidants, vitamins, and minerals, which of course we find in our fruits, vegetables, and really true whole grains, such as ancient grains. Even if you're currently hitting your target overall calories, it's worth taking a closer look at where they're actually coming from. This will factor into your weight loss success. So even though we've been talking about calories this whole time, we really want to know where those calories come from. And you know, most people usually end up getting too much carbohydrates, not enough protein, and too much fat. And it's generally not too much of the quote-unquote good fat. So the next remedy tip for this situation where you might be getting an imbalance of macronutrients is, first of all, you want to make sure that you understand that when it comes to the right balance, each athlete is different, and you must consider his or her own unique lean body mass in training volume. But a good place to start, if you think you might be someone that is eating too much of one macronutrient, is 20% of overall calories come from protein, 50 to 60% from carbohydrates, and 20 to 30% from fat. Now, the higher, 50 to 60% can be a large range. The higher your weekly training volume is, the closer you would aim to 60% and 20% for fat. For example, if you're someone that's training for Ironman and have 20 plus training hours a week, you would be closer to 60% for carbohydrates. You would want to prioritize your carbohydrate sources to come from 3 to 5 servings of fruits and vegetables daily, and that's each fruits and vegetables. So about 4 servings of fruit, 4 servings of vegetables daily minimum. Keep your carbohydrate sources to pre-workout fuels as well as your during workout training fuels and recovery drinks. And then anything else, we would want those carbohydrates to come from foods that meet the quote-unquote core ratio. Cutting calories by ditching foods that are not providing key nutrients or fuel for training, such as sweet, soda, and processed foods. Although many, if you are at this point already trying to improve your body composition, you're probably not consuming those anyway. And keep any of the high-quality whole grains to the post-workout window. Now, talking about fuels and carbohydrates, it is not uncommon for athletes to cut out training fuels or recovery drinks in order to create a calorie deficit. But this can have a negative repercussion as your post-workout fuel teaches your body to store carbohydrates in the form of glycogen more efficiently, and the protein is needed for the recovery process. You never really want to skip this step. And also the negative, it can create a negative effect on race day if you start cutting fuels during your training. And of course, you're not going to be recovering properly. Next step of assessment, you have low lean body mass. So for some athletes, the strength training is a missing component in their program. And when time constraints make it hard to complete training throughout the week, athletes are generally inclined to skip the strength workout in favor of keeping a session in the pool, cycling, and running. And even I have been guilty of this, especially if you're doing something like Ironman or half Ironman. You generally will end up skipping a strength workout over a key run or bike. But when in reality, strength training might be one of the most important ways to improve your specific limiter. And each pound of muscle you gain helps to improve your metabolism, and you can burn an extra 50 to 100 calories per day without doing anything else in your training. Lean body mass uses 5 times the calories as fat mass does. So the remedy tip for this is that first, going back, we need to make sure we even know what your lean body mass is, and that is to get a body fat test done by your coach or a professional trainer. As I mentioned before, scales are not the most reliable sources for initial baseline data. They are good for tracking progress. If you're training for a specific event like a triathlon or marathon, your coach is the best person to work with to determine how you can include strength training into your program, because you want it to actually help you and avoid the times where it could hinder you, such as peak periods before your A races. And as always, when you're doing a strength program, you want to adjust your calorie and protein needs accordingly. I always tell people that, increasing your protein is not going to put on lean body mass, but that's one of the ways to create an environment for your body to be able to put on lean body mass, which happens in the gym. Are you sedentary outside of training? So this is, I've read some interesting research on this. And of course, there's probably very few of you who are actually lounging on the couch this day. So Take this first one with a grain of salt. It's meant to be slightly funny. But while it is important to get adequate sleep, rest, and recovery, hanging out on the couch all day after a training session might be contributing to your plateau. Now, as I mentioned before, if you're an elite or professional, this doesn't necessarily include you, as the level of training that you are doing is above and beyond what most age groupers are doing. And so hanging out on a couch after a 7 or 8 hour training day is probably something your body might need. But what I'm really getting to my point here is what I've seen a lot, and I've seen it even in research, a lot of athletes, we're talking age group athletes that, have families, work a full-time job, they tend to have a lot of sedentary moments outside of training. And what you do in between your exercise and training routine does impact your fitness and your weight loss goals. So the remedy for this is to take a whole day approach to physical activity. And what I mean by this is sort of incorporating movement and low intensity activity into your non-training time. Now, you do want to avoid activities that could increase your hunger and therefore requiring to eat food, which sort of negates the whole point of trying to create another calorie deficit, or to avoid those activities that are going to actually hinder your workout recovery. We don't want that either. We don't want this type of activity hindering your actual training for your A race. But it still provides an opportunity to create a deficit. So an example of what I'm talking about is a low-intensity activity like an easy 30-minute walk. Whether it's walking your dog or going for a walk, at lunch at your office just to get moving around. This type of activity, such as the low-intensity walk, can also improve aerobic efficiency, which is a key for endurance athletes. Now, to give another example for maybe the someone that's more of the fitness enthusiast or is maybe training for a short distance race and works in an office 40 hours a week. Things that might be something that you could do to take this whole day approach is, you've heard them all before. Take the stairs instead of the elevator. Stand or pace while making phone calls, using a stability ball chair, biking to work if you're within a certain amount of mileage that it's not going to, again, negate your other training. Sneaking exercises during conference calls. What research is showing us is that a lot of athletes that are training for races that have issues hitting these weight loss plateaus is because they always want to you might be trying to save your legs or save your energy for that next training session. So all of that decreased physical activity is negatively affecting your sort of weight loss goals, if that makes sense. So to sort of summarize this, some of the things that we discussed, once you have identified one factor or factors, hopefully if you have hit a body composition or weight loss plateau and you've gone through all of these steps of assessment, you have sort of identified the one that could be contributing to it. And you also need to give your body time to adjust. How much time is needed? There really is no magic number. But I always say try sticking to your new game plan for a minimum of 2 weeks before throwing in the towel and going through another assessment. It's going to take your body time to adjust, especially if you fell into that category of consuming low calories and not really eating enough to support your training. It's going to take a little bit longer than 2 weeks. Now, if you've gone through all those steps of assessment and you're still not seeing any movement or improvement on the scale or with your body composition, there could be a few other factors that we didn't really discuss in detail. And I just wanted to mention really quick. So it could possibly be an overtraining issue that could be creating more stress. Lack of recovery could lead to hormonal imbalance, which we'll talk about in a little bit. That's something that you really need to take a look at as well. Your BMR, so your basal metabolic rate. If you're someone that has been on a bigger weight loss journey, someone that maybe needed to lose more than 10 or 15 pounds, as you lose weight, it's going to take less calories to move your body. So a loss of that weight is going to lead to a reduced energy requirement because you have less weight you're carrying around. So that's why it's important to sort of reassess every few months, making sure that you are getting in what your body needs at that point in time. Loss of lean body mass, this just falls into the same category of someone with low lean body mass. Hopefully during this process of weight loss, you haven't lost any lean body mass, but you would go into the same, you would tackle this the same way you would tackle a low lean body mass, and that is with strength training. A hormone imbalance, specifically thyroid hormones, cortisol, and insulin, they could all be making your body hold on to pounds. Now, this would be the last area you would sort of assess. I don't recommend, if you've hit a weight loss plateau, running to your endocrinologist, but if you are certainly someone that has been struggling to lose weight, improve body composition, or you've hit a plateau despite all of these things that you're doing, then you might be a candidate to go see an endocrinologist and get all these blood panels, and they can sort of assess you and evaluate you personally from this standpoint. And one other, I didn't mention it here, but for the when I say the fitness enthusiast, not necessarily a high volume training athlete, but someone that might just be, their physical activity comes from going to the gym 4 or 5 times a week. Many times it just needs, they need a change in their training program, whether it's frequency, duration, or intensity. When it comes to the athlete, changing up your training program should come from your, your coach, so that's why I don't necessarily mention that here. Tools. So food logging, I just wanted to take a minute to make a few suggestions. If you are going to be food logging, something that's really simple, free, and easy that I recommend to my athletes and clients is MyFitnessPal. There's many other ones as well. Training Peaks has a very good nutrition log. They also have apps, so you can do it on your phone as well as your computer. Macronutrient calculator. So at the Core Diet, we actually have designed, many years ago, Jesse has designed a macronutrient calculator that was only offered on the website, and you had to be a member to use it. This is hands down the best tool I have ever seen in terms of determining not only your calorie goals, but your actual macronutrient goals. We now have a free Core Diet app, so I would definitely download that to your phone, and this will give you a good starting place to see what you actually need. Even though MyFitnessPal and Training Peaks are great tools for food logging, their assessment in terms of your macronutrient goals per day are not that great. So I would definitely urge you to use this and then just use the other tools for the food logging. Body composition. You can go and make an appointment and do one of the bod pods, which is considered a gold standard, but a skin fold measurement by your coach or a trainer will do the job. It might be within 1% off, higher or low, but you'll get pretty close to get that initial baseline data. And the most important thing here with the body composition is returning to that same person to get repeat tests done in the future. And my final thought when it comes to weight loss and weight loss plateaus is trying not to get discouraged, and the steps that you are taking to lose weight, improve body composition, are contributing to your overall health, not just your progress as an athlete. Incorporating these healthy practices into your lifestyle is always a positive. Never negate the positive in all of this. You're still, don't throw in the towel because, you're eating those extra fruits and vegetables every day and you're not seeing anything budge on the scale. I always say never lose sight of that regardless of the numbers on the scale. And with that, I wanted to know if anyone actually has any questions. If you have not attended one of our Core Diet webinars in the past, you can actually type directly onto your screen in the chat area, and I will repeat the question and answer if you have one. Okay, if we have no questions tonight, I just wanted to thank you again for joining. As always, this has been recorded and will be posted in the Core Diet member area approximately within the week if you want to revisit. If you have any questions, again, feel free to type it right into the chat area. You can also email me as well if you have a personal question that you want to ask Jamie@thecorediet.com. And I thank you for joining us, and I hope you join us next time. Thank you and have a good night.